This was a little
Okay.
blip that I didn't hear. So everything
Okay.
sound all right?
Yeah, everything's good.
All right, very good. All right, well then, unless you've got any questions,
Mm.
I will go ahead and turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us about yourself and about your journey with the Lord and where you've been and where you're at now.
All righty, let's do this. Okay, so I want to start off with Psalms 40, 1 through 3. It's in the New Living Translation that says, I waited patiently for the Lord to help me, and he turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on solid ground and steadied me as I walked along. He has given me a new song to sing, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see what he has done and be amazed. They will put their trust in the Lord. God graced me for every trial and tribulation that I went through. He pre-warned me by revealing to me that I would have a radical transformation like the Apostle Paul. And I,
Wow.
and I'm like, God, do I have to be shipwrecked? And he said, yeah, basically, but you with God will prevail. So introduce myself. My name is Brenda. I'm the baby of six girls. I was a gifted student and had an IQ off the charts. I was doing 12th grade work while in the sixth grade, so I helped a lot of people graduate. uh, helped a lot of people graduate. Um, I have one son. My roots are started in the Baptist church, but I'm now an ex-Pentecostal minister. Finally, glory to God, this is my first time publicly speaking after surviving 5 strokes. Um, I have the wheelchair and the puzzles here at my house to remind me of God's miraculous healing power, which I'll touch on later as I proceed. I was adopted and raised as an only child. So you can say that I've been adopted twice, once by my parents and once by God. I had a beautiful childhood. Contrary to popular beliefs, I wasn't molested. I wasn't raped. I had any type of sexual trauma growing up. However, I always felt like a boy trapped in a girl's body. And I have notes here, so mind me, I'm, you know, following my
Hey,
notes.
that's okay,
It's
whatever
a lot.
works.
Okay. Uh, let's see. Uh, okay. Okay. I recall how my mom who was a licensed beautician and back in the day. That's the old school word for cosmetologist. She would keep my hair in candy curls and, various colored ribbons and petticoat dresses with the petticoat up under the big fluffy dresses. And I couldn't wait to change and get in some jeans and climb the roof and, and climb trees and jump on the roof. During my elementary years, they wanted to bump me up several grades. However, my mom and my dad were very financially stable and very connected and well known in the city. So they had a conversation with the school superintendent, and they came to an agreement to have me and the other children who were also gifted to leave the classroom for several hours twice a week to do work as an on an advanced level, and then we would come back in the classroom. And the reason for it is so that their reasoning for it was to keep us balanced, to grow up around our own age. But, at the same time, we would get bored if we stayed in the classroom. At night, my mom would tuck me in bed and read stories. About age 4, I had Psalms 23 memorized. At the same time, I was mesmerized how my dad dressed. My mom shared stories with me how dad was voted best dressed man in St. Pete back in the day. He wore the Stacey Adams shoes, the fedora hats, the tailored suits. Saturdays were shopping days for me and mom. And I recall going to a boutique named Slimer's back in the day with the upper echelon women. It was where all the women would come together, governors' wives and that whole crowd, which what I wasn't impressed by, but I was placed in that type of family. And I really can see why now for a particular reason. Um, prior to the close, and my mom knew the owner. Prior to the close of the business, my mom's friend, who was the owner, she would gather all the women together, and they would escort me up on the alteration stand, and I would exalt, and we would have church. Okay, I would exalt the word of God, and some of the women wanted to tip me, but my mom gave me that look, and she said, "No, no, no. This is preparation for ministry, not performance for man." So I had the foundation early. My mom was just sent from God, but I'll get into that too. I knew at an early age that I was called to ministry. Psalm 23 to me was very prophetic and proved to be my lifeline because it established my roots of knowing who God was as my shepherd, but it also established my roots of knowing God as a father. When I was a toddler, my mom shared a story with me how my dad would have a little too much to drink. And one day he came home a little staggering, and I would always run and jump in his arms, and he picked me up. Well, this one particular day, he almost dropped me. And thank God to my mom, she was standing right there, and she told me how she caught me. Um, and what my dad wanted to do was what my mom said to me that, she was close to me, she caught me, but I really can't say that because dad, from that point on, dad stopped drinking because he said that he never wanted to drop me ever again. So the fact that that incident almost made him drop me, that stopped him from drinking. And he said he never wanted to be in a position where, I would be dropped. It reminds me of Mephibosheth in the Bible, which is in 2 Samuel 4. I'm blessed to have parents who didn't drop me when I came out to them. Um, I was exceptional. I was the exception. However, this isn't the case for the majority of LGBTQIA children. My parents were able to provide a life of grace, of green pastures instead of a life that consisted of the weeds of homophobia. Wherever there was a shadow of judgment, my parents were able to shine God's light of mercy, grace, and love. A lot of people said that my parents condoned my life. I'm not sure about that, but I do know that she was my best friend and my safe space. We had this game that we would play called I Ain't Gonna Tell Your Mama. So
Sorry.
I know, I know. So how it went is I would come home and I would walk in the house and say, I don't want to talk to my mom. And then I would look at her and say, I don't want to talk to you today. I need a friend right now. And my mom would reply would be, I ain't gonna tell your mama. And so she would she said, what we need to talk about. Your mama ain't got to know what's going on, you know? And I'm so thankful because mom was able to switch roles and it kept me safe and she met me where I was. I was embraced and not erased. And if the listeners hear nothing else I say, please do not reject your children. As parents, you may mean it one way, probably because of what your pastor has told you, or it could be pressure from your friends or thinking what it would feel like to have a LGBTQIA child. I haven't personally experienced that, but I understand the uneasiness that parents may feel when navigating their child's sexual orientation. However, it's just as traumatic for the child because you may be sending one message, but the way it's received is that, first of all, you're not a safe place. They put up walls. They feel that they can't trust the parents, and you best believe dealing with sexual orientation, especially today, if children can't find a safe place at home, they're going to find somewhere to talk. And those people that the parents don't push them there, but they do push them there because they're not able to talk to them. So they will find a company to keep, and it may not be in their best interest. Um, all through school, I wouldn't have the conversations my friends was having. They was having talks about their boyfriends while I was secretly crushing on my girls. So I never had the conversation of what it felt like. to be attracted to the opposite sex. So I held all that in. I still hadn't came out to my mom yet. I graduated in 1982 and couldn't handle internal pressure. And as I stated, I still had not come out to my parents. I didn't talk about it. Matter of fact, it was seen, but it wasn't really talked about. I remember like my mom would watch like Mom's Mabley, who's I believe she's a lesbian character. My mom's favorite singer was Johnny Mathis. You know what I mean? So even looking back now, I saw it, but I didn't know what it was because it wasn't necessarily talked about. My parents are getting older, and I felt bad because I knew that I wasn't able to give them a child, but I knew they wanted a grandchild. So I started dating this guy who really liked me, and we got married in 1986. The 80s were considered the war on drugs. 1986 to 89 was known as the crack wars. And this is one of the many, many times that I encountered God as a protector. I got caught up in all type of craziness, mainly to escape the eternal suppression that I was experiencing while performing my wifely duties. By the way, my husband was the only man I was ever intimate with because I was raised not to have a child out of wedlock. So I had to marry him to give my parents a grandchild, and I only have the one child. One night I recall walking through the project. So we had got caught up in all type of crazes, dealing drugs, selling drugs, using drugs. Um, and as I stated, one night I recall walking through the projects looking for my cousin to sell a couple kilos. This guy sees me and he yells, "Hey, B, he's right around the corner." I'm like, "Where?" He's like, "He's right around the corner." And ironically, it was a whole lot of cops on the other side of the street, but I didn't have no fear. I was just out there. I was crazy. When I walked around the corner, when I walked around the corner, the guy pulled out a gun and told me to give him everything I had. Even now, I can feel the pressing of the gun on my temple. I said, "Sir, pull the trigger because I'll probably die instantly." And he looked at me. I said, "Let me explain this to you." I'm talking to him just like I'm talking to you. I said, "But if I give you my product, okay, first of all, it was from the Colombians. I'm like, they're not gonna kill me. They're gonna torture me first. Then they're gonna butcher my body, and I'm probably gonna find pieces of my body. Someone's gonna find pieces of my body in the ocean somewhere." I'm like, "So if you need to pull that trigger, do what you gotta do, but I'm not giving you myself." You know what I mean? So I'm not giving you my drug. So he pulled the trigger. He pulled the trigger and it jammed. He pulled
No
the trigger
way.
and it jammed. Yeah, he did. He pulled the trigger and it jammed. And as he went to straighten it back out, he looked up and he repositioned himself to pull the trigger. And as he looked up, his eyes got as big as two silver dollar pancakes. He dropped the gun and ran, and they found him 3 days later dead.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Every time I think about that, I can see that whole scene playing out now. Ironically, that happened. The second incident that happened during a weekend when me and my husband stayed in a hotel waiting for our product to re-up. A re-up is slang for replenishing our product. We had our product, and we both became our best customers. We were both escaping. Um, he had the responsibility of taking care of his mom because his mom was divorced, and he was taking care of. He had, I think, how many brothers? About seven brothers and one girl, and his mom. So he had the responsibility of taking care of them. And then I was just trying to escape life because who I was internally, but at the same time, I had to suppress who I was to give my parents a grandchild, because I was the only child. And I no longer want to live. So I smoked so much crack in the room that day and snorted so much cocaine. And I know it was good stuff because when we would cook our stuff, we didn't dilute it with anything except baking soda. Nowadays you don't know what you're getting, but back then we only diluted with baking soda. Um, so what happened is I went into a coma and my whole body got numb and I went into a coma. Well, because we had product in the room with us, my husband couldn't call the ambulance because we'd been put under the jail. And I don't know how long I was out, But I went, while I was out, I saw this bright light circling around my head. And when I woke up, maybe 2 or 3 days later, it was as if nothing happened, and I think about it, and that's just, I think about how people says that God don't protect gay people. It's not true. That's not true. God protects. Yeah, he's a protector. He says in his word, if you seek me, you'll find me. You know what I mean? I wasn't necessarily thinking about God, and I'm jumping ahead of myself. So let me stay on track. Okay, let me stay on track. Um, uh, my husband finally was arrested for some other crimes, and I told my mom I needed to be homeless, and I wanted to be homeless. The difference, the two extremes are, one, I was raised in a family with a silver spoon in my mouth, so I never necessarily wanted for anything. Um, so that's the part that I needed to be homeless. The part where I wanted to be homeless is I know the life I was living, and I respected my parents too much to have the police come to their house to arrest me. And plus, I was doing drugs, so I was not going to do drugs in their house. You know what I mean? So I just told her I needed to be homeless for that particular reason. And I never forget this. She said, she held back tears, and she's only said, she asked me this question. She said, "Well, will you take food from me if I come find you?" And I'm like, who can say no to that? You know what I mean? I'm like, who can say no to that? And so it was during these times that I experienced the unconditional and sacrificial love from my mom. My mom would have my best friend, and we are still friends today. I will be 62 in April, and we've been friends, me and my best friend, since I was age 2. She would have my best friend drive her to come and look for me. She didn't care if it was a drug hole or a crack house. Nothing stopped her from finding me and feeding me. She never ridiculed me. She never condemned me. Only the unconditional love of God could get better. And it reminds me of the parable of the lost sheep, that Jesus left the 99 to find the one. I finally got arrested and found out that I was pregnant while doing 83 days in county jail. So I finally got arrested. Miraculously, my son was born without a trace of drugs in his system, though I snorted coke and smoked crack during the first trimester of my pregnancy. In no way do I condone the use of drugs or alcohol during the pregnancy. I didn't know that I was pregnant, first of all. And it was only the grace of God that kept me, which his grace is truly sufficient. Um, I never went to any type of addiction counseling. Once I found out I was pregnant, I realized that God had, gave me the answer to my prayer for my parents. So knowing that, I stopped cold turkey and never went back to drugs again. After my child was born, I decided to go to college and major in mass communications. I won a scholarship to UCLA summer internship program, and I did a internship at LA Times. Um, okay, so LA was gay heaven. I could finally be Brenda. I could finally be me. The feelings that I tried to escape and numb were only lying dormant. I partied for the first time in LA with the gay crowd. And that was a life I could only imagine for years that actually became a reality. But it did run short because my parents started getting sick. And so I had to go back to Florida because I was planning on moving to LA. That was home. I mean, I found my crowd, but my parents started getting sick, and so I never kept a job. Either my dad was in the hospital or my mom was in the hospital. I've lost jobs taking care of my parents, which I always promised them, I would be there to take care of them. Finally, my father passed, and by this time I was dressing like a man, growing a beard. I even went to the doctor to discuss having a sex change. I eventually had a nervous breakdown because I was overwhelmed from taking care of my parents, being a mom, dealing with my father's death, dealing with stressful relationships, and, at the same time, just trying to understand why I still felt like a boy trapped in a girl's body. I began to regularly talk about committing suicide. Um, and my girlfriend at that particular time committed me to a psychiatric hospital. and they admitted me. I was there for maybe 3 or 4 days. Um, they diagnosed me and just said that, I had a nervous breakdown or whatever. They prescribed medicine. I didn't take it. I would take it and, I know I'd hide it. I put it under my tongue and drunk the water, but I never took it. And I'm also a poet. So I would write poetry instead of taking the medicine. And the poetry was very cathartic for me. And I will share one with you now. It says, where one of the poems wrote while I was in the psychiatric ward. Where I am today, stopped in my tracks as my creativity sits back. I began to take care of me, responsibility. I welcomed with an open mind to prepare my mentality. Dimness encompassed my spirit for so very long. The faith that I maintain has kept me strong. I know not who I was. I saw a reflection of a stranger. Unable to figure her out, I lashed out in anger. The pain I have embraced for so many years revealed itself in the form of a tear. Untrue to others as well as to myself, proved to be a battle that wreaked havoc on my health. My system was toxic, internal cleansing past due, detoxification of past frustration that constantly kept me blue. No more pointing fingers or behaving irresponsibly. Blindfolds are now off. Now I can see. So I finally started dating, and I recall a conversation that I had with my girlfriend. And I asked her if she had told her parents about us, and her reply was she couldn't. So I asked her why, and she said, well, because I was raised military and my dad's a preacher, so she was raised very conservative. So I replied to her, I'm like, well, I'm going to tell my mom, because me and my mom, as I stated, would play that game. I could tell her anything,
Mhm.
but ironically, I hadn't told her that yet. Um, so I put my mom on speakerphone and I said in my voice, and she knew, I'm like, hey, mom, I'm at my girlfriend's house. And then she's like, okay. I'm like, no, mom, I'm at my girlfriend's house. She said, okay. I'm like, mom. She's like, Brenda, I know you're gay. What do you want? I'm like, you knew? You knew it. And she's like, I raised you. How could I not know? I was just waiting for you to be comfortable enough to tell me. Um, so yeah, so I was in another city at that particular time, about 15 miles away from home. And I got home about 10 minutes. I think I broke every traffic light. I ran every traffic light just to get home. And so I remember when I walked in the door, I could see her sitting there in the kitchen chair with her oxygen mask because she was on oxygen and she also was had a walker. And she heard me at the door and she's like, look, girl, she called me little girl. She's like, look, girl, get in here, and I'm tiptoeing around the corner. I don't know why I don't know what I was thinking. And she, so I had hair down my back, and she grabbed me by my ponytail. I know that sounds kind of violent, but it wasn't. And she said, you come here, you look at me, you look at me. And she pointed her hand and her finger at me and she said it 3 times. She said, I love you. I love you. I love you. And she says, I may not live to see this, but God has a plan for your life. And that's all she ever said. That's all she ever said. Um, when my mom passed, and the thing too, with my mom, so all my girlfriends' parents rejected them, but my mom embraced them. You know what I mean? She loved them. She loved on them. Even when me and a girl would break up, my mom still would have them at her house. And I would say, what are you doing here? My mom would go, well, I didn't break up. What do you did? You know what I mean? So she, she's like, I'm loving on her right now. I'm like, oh, whatever, you know what I mean? So needless to say, I'm friends with one of my girlfriends is bisexual. She's married to a man now. Another one is a traveling nurse. She lives in Colorado now. The other one unfortunately died of bone cancer, but they all was in my mom's life. When my mom passed, pretty much every gay person in St. Pete showed up at a homegoing service. Uh, and they called her Mama May, you know what I mean? And it was just, even think about it now, how, they came to support her, and say she was the one woman that showed them love. So after the homegoing service was over, I asked God in prayer one day, I'm like, God, how could my mom love, and their parents rejected them. And God said, well, Brenda, it's simple. Your mom used wisdom. The other parents was wounded. I was
Yeah.
like, wow, you know what I mean? They were wounded. And, you know, so that's pretty much my story. But I will go into like the first transformation was so fast forward. Okay, so that whole scene is over. I moved to Tampa because I told my parents that I would always stay there until they passed. So I moved to Tampa and I started attending one of the biggest, I'm not gonna say names of churches, but I started attending a big mega church here back in the day. And this particular time that they were having a conference and a cruise. And the cruise was for $99. And so my girlfriend, we were going to church together. And she said, well, you want to go? I'm like, no, you go. And then she's like, no, I'm going to send you, you know what I mean? Because you've been through a lot, taking care of your mom, dealing with your parents' death and, just everything you've been through. I'm like, okay, no problem. So we had been praying too that we we wanted what God wanted for us. You know what I mean? Even though we was in a relationship, it was taught at that particular time, and most still teach it this way. That it's sin, it's abomination, but you can't call homosexuality abomination if you don't go to Proverbs and the seven things that's listed there as abomination. So you really can't use being a liar as abomination. So you really can't use that scripture. You know what I mean? But we didn't know we were in, indoctrinated, pretty much just, I don't know. But we came to the agreement that we loved God more than we loved each other. And we initially ended it. But at that particular time, and I was praying for God's will to be in my life. I'm like, God, whatever you're open to, whatever you're open to, do it. So I'm on this cruise and I'm sitting on the deck and I'm listening how all other people are talking about how much they pay for a cruise. And I'm saying to myself, I paid $99. I don't know what y'all, and I have the same, scenery y'all do. And all of a sudden, I just felt something lift. And I'm like, I said this out loud. I'm like, I'm not gay anymore? And I mean, you know how they say the sky. Yeah, I'm like serious. I felt something lift. And I've said, am I not gay anymore? Because I felt that lifting. And you know how the sky gets blue, the water gets greener. And I'm like, I feel different. I don't know. So anyway, me and my girlfriend don't we hadn't argued. We don't argue. We knew how to work out our agreements. We can agree to disagree. So she had to pick me up from the cruise port and take me home. Well, that weekend I just went back home with her. You know what I mean? And so we started fussing like cats and dogs. We have never had an argument to that extreme till it got physical. You know what I mean? And so she said to me, she's like, I'm taking you home. And then when she said home, I literally heard the audible voice of God says, come, he said, yeah, Brenda, come back home to your first love. So she takes me home. I'm in the car, and as she's taking me home, I'm hearing God give me instructions on what to do when I get home. And what he told me to do was, he said, when you get home, sit in your chair for 3 days, no food, only drink water, only get up to use the restroom. And I said, okay. And so I sat in the chair for 3 days and I felt I mean, I have never, well, I have now, but I had never experienced a purging and a purifying and just a cleansing that occurred during those 3 days. And then when it was over, God said, get up and go look in the mirror. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know what to expect. And my whole looks was transformed. I mean, but the one of my girlfriends said I look like a drag queen in a dress. You know what I mean? But when I went and looked in the mirror, my entire features was changed. You know what I mean? Even as I'm talking about it now, I don't know why I didn't get the sex change, but God obviously knew what was going to happen. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
was a straight boy. You know what I mean? I was growing a beard. I was had observed my dad's dressing, the fedora hats. I mean, I remember going to this one concert, and it was Alicia Keys, matter of fact. And I had the mannerisms of if I'm gonna wear a suit and a tie, my girlfriend has to have the matching dress, or I will have the matching tie. So I remember walking in the concert and had my head down one day, and this guy says, "Man, you rocking that suit." Then I lifted up my head. He's like, "You a female?" He's like, "Oh my gosh," you know what I mean? So I didn't have no feminine nothing. I was
Yeah.
straight boy. You know what I mean? But whatever, what the first transformation that God during that 3 days of fasting and purging and purifying and cleansing me, I looked like a woman. You know what I mean? So when I was standing in the mirror, he says, "I'm not done yet." I'm like, "What else are you gonna do?" And then he says, "Get rid of all your clothes." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Get rid of all your clothes." I only had men clothes, I only had men clothes. I'm like, "But God," he's like, "Get rid of all your clothes." And I need to back up. So when I started, I don't know, my mom would read the story, the Bible stories to me. It's two scriptures that stuck out to me. It was Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And I just felt in my heart that God said to me, as long as I live, that would be my lifetime scripture. And so when he told me to get rid of all my clothes, I went back to Proverbs 3, 5, 6. I'm like, is this It's like trusting the Lord, lean not on your understanding. And it was at that moment where God had to escort me past the understanding, because I wasn't understanding, why am I getting rid of all my clothes? And God just says, get rid of all your clothes. And so I went to the church I was going to. I took all my clothes. The only dress I had in the closet was from my father's funeral. That's the only dress I had. And I took that too. Took all my Stacey Adams shoes, all my hats, all my ties. I put them in the car, and I took them to the boutique. And I'm just standing there like, what? You know what I mean? So my friend now, well, my best friend, one of my best friends, not the one since two, but she lives in Georgia now. She called me, and she's like, "Brenda." I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "I guess." She's like, "I don't understand what God just told me to do." I'm like, "What?" And then I said, Well, I'm not understanding neither," because she didn't know what was going on with me. I hadn't talked to her.
Right.
She's like, "I'm not understanding." She says, "I know you got a whole closet full of clothes." She said, "But God just told me to call you and take you on a shopping spree." I'm like, "What?" And so I told her what God told me to do. And she's like, "What?" Yeah. So God knew he was going to tell her to take me on a shopping spree. So she's the one that taught me how to be feminine a little bit. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
She was the one that bought me feminine clothes and taught me how to do, because I would cross my legs. I would grab my crotch. I would just do stuff. Like, I would just do stuff. You know what I mean? I didn't know what it was like to be a woman. I mean, I didn't. And so that went on for a while. And then fast forward to being ordained. And then uh, they told me, and I still was, with the process of sanctification, everything doesn't happen immediately. I still had the swagger and the walk a little bit. You know what I mean? But they knew me prior. They knew me prior because that's the church I was going to. So they said, well, before you get ordained or whatever, we have to take you through deliverance of prayer, way to gay, and they called me an abomination and this and that and that. And as I put in the post, I faked it, because you can't change your orientation. And so I really wanted to preach the word of God. And I went out, I evangelized. But then like I would come home, I would cry because I was carried. It wasn't necessarily the being gay that was tearing me down. It was the shame that I was carrying with it. You know what I mean? Because like, I do a lot of Brené Brown's um books or whatever, and that, like she said, shame is your mistake. You know what I mean? And I believe shame and guilt is Siamese twins. You can't have one without the other. You know what I mean? Shame says you are a mistake. Guilt says you made a mistake. And so I'm walking around with all this shame and this guilt, and I would go out and preach the house down. I mean, and to my note, I have three bona fide miracles. Three people have gotten out of wheelchairs, and to this day they're still walking. So I know the power of God was moving through me and in me. But at the same time, I came home and I literally cried every night when I would come from an assignment. So fast forward to December 30th, 2023. And this was back, I got ordained in 2012. So we're talking about 13,
Good.
14 years of carrying
Wow.
shame. You know what I mean? During that time, and I have to be careful how I say this, during that time, that's when I had between 2020 and 2025, I've had 5 strokes. The doctor, one of my doctors, I went to the ER and because I was in and out the hospital all the time. And she says, this is something that you never want to have a doctor tell you. She's like, you're an enigma. She's like, we don't understand. You know what I mean? What's going on? I have a suspicion of what it was, and I will say this, and I will say this. When you're suppressing who you are, the pressure has to come out somewhere. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I have no medical reason. I don't have high blood pressure. My cholesterol is a little bit elevated, but it's nothing like that. I don't have any reason, you know. Um, and so from that, so fast forward to December 30th, 2023. And I was just at this point, I would leave my church and I would go back to my church. Um, and December 30th, 2023, God spoke to me and he was like, you can't pray this away. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, I've seen your tears and he says, I, they're overflowing right now. And he says, you can't pray this away. And I'm like, why? What are you talking about? And he says, well, you have CAH. And I'm like, what's CAH? And he said, Google it. I mean, that's the way me and God talks. It's like we
Hmm.
have that relationship to where, and I don't say this to a lot of people. Like, for example, and she can testify if, yeah, she'll testify this. So, for example, if it's raining, I literally can talk to God and say it won't be raining by the time I get to where I'm going. You know what I mean? I just can, and I don't say that, because I don't know. I don't know. But every time she was helping me with laundry one day and it was pouring down rain. I'm like, oh, it'll be stopped by the time we get to where we're going. Just like I said, it was pouring down. By the time we got there, it stopped. You know what I mean? So, and I think too, wow, Steve, this just dropped in my spirit. I think the simple fact that because my mom when she passed, I mean, like I literally lost it. You know what I mean? And got admitted again to the psychiatric unit. Had a nervous breakdown because she was the only one understood me. You know what I mean? And so outside, and like I said, next to my mom, next to God, it was her. And I think too that my faith was so strong because I had to depend on Him for everything. No, people didn't understand me. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So we had that connection to where I think I built my resilience, you know. And anyway, so going back to the strokes, you know what I mean? I have no side effects. You know what I mean? Now I do have to stay peaceful because like my neurologist looks at me now and she's like, Brenda, I'm seeing all the damage on your brain. You have damage in every lobe. She's like, but look at you. And I say to Tommy, she said, you're beautiful, you well put together, you dress nice. I'm like, that's all I have. You know what I mean? Because that's all I have. I have my external. Now, as I was going through the healing from the strokes, you know what I mean? I would look at the records and what they said, but then I'm like, I believe the report of the Lord. You know what I mean? I know what the doctor's report said, but I know what God can do. You know what I mean? And so that's why I have no side effects as far as any damage or whatever. Now, what's God hasn't healed is I have arthritis in both of my knees. I still walk with I walk with a cane. You know what I mean? So I think that too. I'm by me having. He says I got to go through what Paul went through. I guess that's maybe my thorn in the flesh. I don't know. But so I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah. So that's my story. So when I looked up up CAH, it is congenital adrenal hyperplasia and pretty much now it makes sense too um why I was placed in a well-to-do family because of having excuse me, having to get the shots. They didn't know what it was then. This is just recent studies, but I do know with my testosterone, I think that's called hypoandrogenism or something like that. Um, with my testosterone and me wanting to have a sex change. But one of the symptoms of CAH is that due to the androgens that my biological mom produced, my brain was masculinized from birth, so prenatally masculinized. So hence that's why I always felt like a boy trapped in a girl's body. I didn't know what it was, and so just recently, I'm like God, and people ask me, you know, are you open to change? I'm like, I want God's perfect will for my life. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Hmm.
He hasn't done it yet. I'm like, but he still can do it. You know what I mean? So for 15 plus years, I've remained celibate. You know what I mean? I would see God. I would want a girlfriend. It never worked out. You know what I mean? It never worked out. You know what I mean? No, never worked out. God would shut every door. She ended up being, we'll talk maybe for a day or so, and they wouldn't call back or whatever. And I'm like, okay, God, you obviously in this because I know I'm not ugly. I know that. You know what I mean? I know I'm not ugly. So I don't know if this is something supernatural. Nobody wants to date me. I even asked my best friend, I'm like, would you date me? I'm like, am I ugly? Is something wrong with me? You know what I mean? And she's like, I don't get it. And then, so yeah. But anyway, I came to the conclusion that, yeah, God didn't want me to date because he knew what he was going to do. And so, like when I posted the post, do you want me to read the post again when I posted in,
You
oh,
can, sure.
okay. Okay. All right. So where is it? Um, I, where is it? Got to find it.
I didn't pull it up, so I don't have it handy. But and if you can't
Okay.
remember it, you can go by, just what you can remember, or we can go ahead and talk about some other things. I have some questions for you.
I found it. You want me to read it or no?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. I says, good morning, our Rethinking God with Tacos family. You guys have encouraged and supported me in my journey without any judgment. This is why you will be the first to know who the sun sets free is free indeed. As some of you may know, I shared how I felt like a boy trapped in a girl's body from my youth. I was loved by my parents, and prior to being ordained as a Pentecostal minister, I was called an abomination and told that I had to pray away the gay. I went through quote unquote deliverance, however, nothing changed. I traveled and evangelized, but was consumed with shame due to being told that the essence of my being was a mistake. I developed an internalized homophobia and hated myself. Fast forward to December 2023, God revealed to me in prayer that I couldn't pray away the gay and that I was born with a DSD, which is a difference in sexual development, and my brain was masculinized prenatally from birth. I remain celibate as I continue to seek God and believe that nothing is impossible with God. I believe for a miracle, and after experiencing every alphabet within the LGBTQIA, I encounter God in such an intimate way, and 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 I encounter God in such an intimate way and transforming way, and I'm ecstatic to say that I'm completely healed and no longer have same-sex attraction.
Amen.
Amen.
So, and you kind of answered this, but I'm honestly still a little bit confused.
Okay.
Do you still feel conflicted, or do you feel like you're not attracted to women anymore? I didn't really follow that. You're not.
I'm not. I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not. I feel like when I was at work the other day,
But
I
you're
was
not
talking.
attracted to men either.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, I see.
Not yet.
That's the not yet
Yeah,
part. I see what you're saying.
yeah, not
And
yet. Yeah.
and to answer the question you asked your girlfriend earlier, I find you to also have a great personality and a very open and friendly person as well, which should people should find attractive, I would think as well.
Yeah, but God
Now,
says no.
you mentioned your child, but I didn't
Yeah.
hear much about that. You had a child, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
how old is that child, and are they still part of your life?
Yeah. He's 37. He's 37. When he gets mad at me, he wants to call my girlfriend and tell on me. Well, my ex-girlfriend, they were really good friends. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Yeah, but she shuts it down. And she's the one that's married now. You know what I mean? So I tell him like, no, don't call her. You know what I mean? That's when he can't have his way with me. He'll want to call her and tell her me. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. But yeah, he knows about my life. You know what I mean? I've never been in the closet with my son. He was there with my girlfriends. Matter of fact, the one girlfriend that um, we decided to that well, the one that sent me on the cruise, and we decided to love God more than we loved each other. And because we broke up, we didn't break up on a disagreement. We broke up because we both loved God more than we loved each other. Uh, we raised our kids together. Yeah. So she had two girls and then the one boy I have.
And did you ever tell him what your mother told you, that he could come talk to you and you wouldn't tell his mother?
Say that again.
The way your mother used to tell you, you can tell me, I won't tell your mother.
No, well, he's the type of child. He says I don't understand life. Um, like okay. I mean, you can't. I think it takes a.
Well, maybe when we're done with this and I get it published, I'll give you a link. Maybe he should take a listen because I think you would talk to him and not tell his mother. Anyway,
Yeah,
and he might have some frustrations there.
yeah, yeah.
If I think because I know you're part of the Rethinking God with Tacos group now that you reminded me of that,
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure I know what your thoughts on God are, but I'm guessing, and just correct me if I'm wrong, that your thoughts are he's an all good, all loving God, and
Yeah.
everybody's going to end up with him, and he doesn't judge anybody for anything.
Right, right, right.
Okay.
You just brought something back to me too. I remember, and I recently went to a meeting at the church that I'm attending right now because I have this ministry called Glow, and it stands for God's Love Overpowers Warfare. And I met with the assistant pastor, and they were saying people didn't necessarily understand my stance. um, they're saying that that I'm approving of homosexuality. And, I'm like, I don't even know how to respond to that. I say, because it's not about gay rights with me. It's about human rights. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't have a heaven or hell to put anyone in. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
If I don't have that. I'm like, my thing is this. I'm in the position to where I want to give an ear to hear instead of a mouth to judge. you
Hmm.
know and it's about, like, for example, I can tell you stories that I mentor and counsel one-on-one right now. But I do believe that it's gonna get bigger. So this I received the inbox to talk with this one particular parent. Well, no, I'll tell the one about Dunkin' Donuts. So I was riding the Dunkin' Donuts is like my stop every day going to work. And so I was riding through the drive-through one day, and God says, "No, I need you to go in." And I'm like, "Okay." So I get in, and I'm kind of fumbling around because he ain't said nothing else. So I get out the car and I go in, and I'm just waiting for him to speak. And then so they asked me, could they help me? I'm like, "Yeah, I'm steady looking." I was looking in the case because God's not speaking. I'm like, "Okay, God, why am I here?" You know what I mean? And then he's like, asked for he called out what she had on, how hair was fixed. He says, "Call her to you." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'm like, "And do what?" It's just nothing. So
Yeah.
I pointed at the girl. I'm like, "Hey, can you come here for a minute?" And then she's like, "Sure, how can I help you?" And I'm just sitting there smiling with her because I'm like, "God, can you like say something? You got me."
Now what do I do?
Right. And then so he finally goes, he's like, so ask her if she has kids. I'm like, "So you have kids?" And I'm like, I'm doing it just like this. I'm like, "You have kids?" And then she's like, "Yeah, how do you know?" I'm like, "I just, I don't know." And then God said, "Ask everyone I'm gay." And I was like, I don't want to sound, I said, "I'm a minister, I said, is any of your kids gay?" And then she's like, "Oh my gosh, how did you know?" And I'm like, "Oh." She's like, how did you know? I'm like, I said, as I stated, I'm a minister, and God just shows me things like that. And so we became friends, whatever. And then, he said, exchange numbers. So we exchanged numbers. I invited her to my birthday party and this and that. And we talked, and she said their relationship was really strained. You know what I mean? He wasn't opening up to her. She didn't understand it. You know what I mean? And after talking with her and just giving her some tips and tools, she came up to me. This was last year, so just the other day. It took about a year for it to work out, and she came up to me the other day and she hugged me, and I'm like, "What is this for?" She's like, "Oh my gosh, me and my son are doing so good. We're talking, and he's getting
Oh,
therapy."
wonderful.
And then she's like, "I love you, I love you, I love you." I'm like,
Praise
"Girl,
to
please."
God. He's
You know,
amazing.
yeah, he is. He is. He is. He is. So I have to like really shut down all the voices because it wasn't a conference call on what God called me to do, and I don't really care who likes it or who doesn't like it. I don't care. The only thing I
Right.
care about is what God's telling me to do. You know what I mean?
Amen.
That's I have to. You know what I mean? And He told me, He's like, well, they're gonna reject it. You know what I mean? He said, but then that's on them. You know what I
Right.
mean? He said, as long as you do what I tell you to do, you ain't got nothing to worry about. You know what I mean? And sometimes I look crazy, but I don't mind looking crazy for God. And that's how you know it's God. When you're
Right.
willing to look crazy for Him, because anybody can be comfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've lost a lot of friends. Now, when I was silent, living a suppressed life, everybody liked me and this and that, and I'm fine. But when I started getting vocal, you know what I mean, and being supportive, of not just gay people, but human rights, period. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's not even about the LGBTQ community for me, but I think because that's a part of my story, people associated that with me. But I mean, I'm for disabled people. I'm for marginalized people. I'm for oppressed people. However, whatever your form of oppression is, or whatever you're marginalized against, I'm for you. I'm for the underdog. You know
Right.
what I mean? So I really don't care, and I've lost a lot of friends, and I guess that's a part of, you know, being transformed like Paul, because Paul was outcast. You know what I
Amen.
mean? They didn't
Yeah.
like him. You know what I mean? So that's that. That's my story.
He said, "You will suffer for me." Well, I
Yeah.
like to keep these to an hour or under, so I'm going to wrap it up. But if you don't
Okay.
mind if sticking around for a little bit, once I shut off the recording, I got a couple other things I want to discuss with you.
Okay.
But before I shut off the recording, I got one more question to ask you on the recording.
Okay.
This series is called Let's Discover God Together. And it was meant to catch people from all different places and angles. Maybe you didn't even believe in God, or maybe you didn't know what God to believe in. My God, there's 45,000 different Christian
Right.
denominations
Right.
out there and 100 different Bible translations, and Lord knows how many pastors preaching a different version. So if somebody's searching, trying to figure out who that one real true God is, who should they be following? Who should they be, or how would they know? What advice would you give them? What would you tell them? If you want to know, go ahead.
Oh wow, wow. I wasn't prepared to answer that.
That's all right. It's from your heart or from God.
Yeah,
Take a minute and see what
yeah,
He wants to say through you.
yeah, yeah. I what's coming to me right now is He will meet you where you are. Just cry out
Amen.
to Him. He will meet you where you are.
Amen.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you know, do you know who Paul Young is?
yeah.
The guy who wrote
Mm-hmm.
The Shack?
Yeah.
I interviewed him the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked him that question at the end,
Mm-hmm.
he said, ask him.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yep. 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 Yep.
All right, dear. It's been
Yep.
wonderful. I thank you for your time, Brenda. Like I said,
Thank
hang
you.
in there. I'm going to stop the recording, but I want to talk to you a little bit after that. It's been
Okay.
great you sharing your very honest journey with everybody, and I hope it helps. I'm sure it will help somebody along the way.
Okay. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Okay.